Hi everyone! Today we are going to finish our Faith Ringgold quilt inspired collage. So remember on the very first day of this project, this was a few weeks ago now when you did your sketch, we looked at some quilt art by the artist Faith Ringgold. We have made a collage. If we had sewn these pieces out of fabric, it would be a quilt. But since we don't have that, we made it out of paper. To help make this look even more like a quilt, we're going to add a design to the border now in a pattern. Not all quilts have a border or have a pattern, but some of them do, and I noticed some of Faith Ringgold's had a border with images in it. So we're going to do that now, and instead of just drawing it in, or instead of adding it as a collage like we've done so far, I thought we would mix it up and add it as a stamp or a form of printmaking. So what I'm going to use first to make my stamp is a piece of styrofoam. You can use this, you might have styrofoam at home, like a styrofoam plate you could cut a square from, or I do have some at school here you could come to get when you're here for learning labs or testing, or any other reason why you might be here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my piece of styrofoam so that it's about the same thickness as my border. Now I didn't use a ruler for my border, so I know it's going to be different thicknesses all the way around, but I want to get it to be about the same thickness that it is everywhere. So it looks like I need to trim. I'm making a little mark with my nail right there and right there. So I'm just going to use scissors, and I'm just trimming it where I made that little mark. Oops, one more mark. There. All right, so now if I hold this up to my border, it should fit in the border like this. And I'm going to stamp it many times all the way around to create a pattern. Alright, so step one is to trim your piece of styrofoam so that it fits inside your border. So for me, this is probably about an inch and a half. It depends how big you made your border for how big you're going to cut yours. Now, I want this to be a stamp. Right now, it's just flat. There's no design on it. So I'm going to be using a pen to draw a design on my stamp. You get to choose what your design is showing, but I want it to show the emotion of what you were feeling during the experience you showed in your collage. So if you showed an experience that was really exciting, like maybe you got a new younger brother or sister, or maybe you went and saw the sunset somewhere and it was really beautiful, you would draw something on here that reminds you of being excited. My story, if you remember, was kind of exciting but kind of scary at the same time. When I was in that kayak race and it was stormy and the waves were really big and people were falling out of their kayaks. So I want to draw something on this that reminds me of that feeling that I was experiencing during them. So I'm going to think for a second. It could be that I draw, like an emoji that's showing the expression, or it could be more of an abstract design that just reminds you of that feeling. I think I'm going to go with more of an abstract design. I'm going to draw it with pen, and I'm going to press kind of hard with my pen so that it carves into the styrofoam. So let me do that now. All right, here is my design that I drew. Again, it's kind of abstract, which means it might not look like anything exactly from real life, but I'll show you close up here. So I drew this kind of zigzag line that's going on a diagonal. That diagonal line and a zigzag line kind of just makes me think of that like kind of uneasy, nervous feeling. And it's okay if it doesn't remind everyone of that. Since I'm the artist, it reminds me of that. That's okay. I drew in a few different spots this kind of water line just to show, water was everywhere. It was crashing into the boat. My kayak was filling up with water. It was splashing all around me. I was soaking wet by the end of this race. So I just drew that water line in 3 different spots just to kind of show that it was all over. I put a little like kind of kayak shape in there, a couple drops of water too. So if you were to just look at this and not know my story, you probably wouldn't know what it's showing, but that's okay. When I tell you the story, it fits, and since I'm the artist, seeing this kind of reminds me of that feeling that I was feeling when I was actually in that race. All right, so step one, you're cutting a piece of styrofoam so that it fits inside the border that you left on your collage. Step two, you're going to use a pen. Now a pencil will work too, but I think a pen works a little bit easier. To draw your design on the styrofoam, make sure you're pressing kind of hard. So if I close my eyes, I can feel all those lines because they're carved into the styrofoam. This is only going to work if they were carved in. Step three is going to be to start to stamp it. So to stamp it, I need to put washable marker on here first. So I've got some washable markers. I think I'm going to use a few different colors just to show a pattern. So I'm going to start with orange, and I'm going to color on top of the styrofoam design. All right, if your markers are pretty new, so they're kind of like juicy still, and you do this fast enough, you could just take your design, if you can see how it kind of looks wet still, and you could probably just stamp it right away. My markers are not brand new, so I don't think that would work for me. So after I color my design, I'm going to use a damp sponge. So this is a sponge that I already added water to, and then I squeeze most of the water out. So it's not soaking wet, it's just a little damp. I might need to add more water in a second here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my paper with this damp sponge. And like I said, it might not be wet enough, but we'll see. Hopefully your sponge is clean. Mine, you can see, has some paint on it. Hopefully that paint will come off. But I'm wiping just the border. I don't want to wipe the other paper. It's going to smear, just to get it a little damp. And then I'm going to take my piece of styrofoam. The marker is going to touch the wet side of the paper, and I'm rubbing it all over. So making sure the whole thing, kind of using this part of my thumb to make sure I rub the whole thing all the way to the sides, all around. Then I can lift up my styrofoam carefully, and do you see what happened? That washable marker transferred onto the paper since the paper was kind of wet. Now what I'm going to do is just repeat this so that it goes all the way around my paper. It's going to take a little bit of time, but it should be pretty quick because it's just the same steps over and over. I could do the whole thing the same color, all orange, but I think I'm going to mix it up a little. If you see some orange or some of your color left, so I've got a little bit of orange left there, you might want to wipe it off with a paper towel before you put your next color on there so that they're not mixing if you don't want them to mix. So I'm going to repeat this. I will show you as I do it, and then I'll show you when it's all done. Make sure as you're repeating these steps, when you are wiping your paper with a sponge, you do not wipe over where you've already stamped. Since that's washable marker, if I were to wipe that with a wet sponge, it's going to really smear and mess up my design. So what I'm going to do, my third stamp, because I already have two, I'm going to make sure that I am just wiping below where I already stamped so that I'm not smearing it. All right, I just finished my entire border. I'm trying to be careful as I hold it because you can see my fingertips kind of got some marker on them, but it's washable, it'll come off. I just don't want it to smear on the rest of my artwork. So here is my finished piece now. So you can see I took that stamp all the way around the border. I tried to keep my pattern going. I had this like maroon, orange, green, maroon, orange, green. I almost got it to be perfect except at the end, maroon, orange, green, maroon, orange, and then I had to start over. But that happens, it's okay. All right, so I'm going to say the steps again for today, and then I'm going to tell you what I want you to tell me or type to me when you submit this on Schoology. So for today, the first step was to get a piece of styrofoam, either one you got from school when you came to pick up supplies, or if you have styrofoam at your house. It could be from a plate, it could be from like a tray. Sometimes a styrofoam tray comes under like vegetables or something you buy at the store. The first step is to cut it so that it is about the same size as the border you left on your collage. Remember, you were supposed to leave a border. If you did not leave a border, you'll have to find a way that you could add a border to your artwork. So cut it the right size. Step 2 was to use a pen and draw a design into the styrofoam that reminds you of the emotions or feelings that you were feeling when you were having whatever experience you were showing. So for mine, it was kind of a nervous, excited feeling, and I created this design to show that. Your design can be abstract like mine, or it could be something that looks like something from real life. After you've drawn it in pen, you are going to stamp it all the way around. The way that you stamp it is by first coloring it with a washable marker, getting your paper damp with a sponge, stamping it onto the damp paper and kind of pressing the back, and then repeating that over and over again. After you have filled your whole border, I want you to send me a picture or a video on Schoology. And when you do that, I want you to explain to me what emotion you were trying to show in your border. So for me, I was trying to show a combination of feeling a little bit nervous and excited in my stamp. And I showed that all the way around. I can't wait to see what stamps you make, and I can't wait to see your finished quilt collage.